Sometime after that, this is one of the first paintings that I started to do. This was based on a dream I had. I saw this painting in a dream, and I wasn't painting it. I hadn't been painting forever. And there was an artist in the dream, and I couldn't see his face, and he was like talking to me about this painting. I woke up, I was like, I gotta do this painting. And a week later, I did the painting, and then about 2 weeks later, I get a message from a friend of mine's mother that an artist, Noah Davis, who started the Underground Museum in Los Angeles, had passed away. And I was like, that was who was in my dream. And she contacted me and said, hey, before Noah passed, he told me that he really wanted me to buy some work from you. Well, there was a group of black female artists that he had said, look, you need to buy some work. So it was kind of this interesting serendipity, but it really felt like this was Noah saying it's time to start painting. So you can see there's gold leaf on this, and then in the center there is actually, it's relief. There's a frame on the window, and completely allowing me to flatten out and start thinking about shape and polygons and geometry and in a different way, and to loosen up, because so much of my work is very structured and clean, and so this was kind of the beginning of it. This piece also, as you can see, it looks like the top of the house is on fire. This is part of a series of pieces I did called The Fire Next Time, which, if any of you guys are familiar, that's a title of a book by James Baldwin, who's an amazing writer. Really highly recommend you learn about him if you don't know. And so there's a quote that's connected to this I'm going to read to you called from the book, and it just goes like this. Perhaps the whole root of our trouble, the human trouble, is that we will sacrifice all the beauty of our lives. We'll imprison ourselves in totems, taboos, crosses, blood sacrifice, steeples, mosques, races, armies, flags, nations, or even deny the fact of death, the only fact we have. It seems to me that one ought to rejoice in the fact of death, ought to decide, indeed, to earn one's death by confronting with passion the conundrum of life. That just gets me every time I read it. So wanting to honor him and what he was, all of the beautiful things that he was kind of trying to get us to think about. Here's the painting and the facade pieces are really starting to merge. This is an example of that. Same time that this was happening, and when I moved back from New York, I started learning how to quilt. So once I figured out kind of the tradition and the techniques of quilting, I basically decided to go against all of them. So when I just recently had a show at the San Jose Quilt and Textile Museum. It's the first time I've shown in that kind of a space, and there's quilters there who saw the work and were telling me they liked it. I was so worried that they would be looking at the pieces and think, oh, she's not doing this right. Because as you'll see, I break a lot of rules. One being that traditionally quilts are made to be put on a bed, and so they have to be, square or rectangular usually, but I'm not doing that. It's kind of referencing house structures a little bit in here. You can see there's a few shapes that just managed to take that on. Here's kind of a up-close detail. So my rule is that I can use the machine as much as I need to, but that there needs to be some hand stitching in it. So you can see the gold hand stitching in there. It's a ladder, and there's a little smoke in gold. Just simple, but not simple. And most of the fabric that I use in my textiles, except for a few of the more recent ones, it's all mainly all repurposed fabrics. So old clothes, old sheets, anywhere I could find it. People will oftentimes donate fabric to me or to an institution that I'm working with. It's one of my all-time favorite things is to collect stories from other people around the fabrics. So here you can see that there's threads coming off the fabric. Can get a little messy. But here I wanted there to be the shape of the house and almost like a barn shape. and working with patterns, which eventually I would decide that I wanted to break the patterns, but this was my effort to kind of think about patterning. Still bringing the home theme in because I'm pretty obsessed with it. This was a show I did in Oakland called Reconnect. You can see just a few of the pieces that were in that show, and this was mainly all fabric that people contributed to the institution, Pro Arts, and then I took it and made work from it. This piece in particular is kind of personal for me because there was a story that my dad used to tell me about his great-grandfather someone had decided that his great-grandfather was going to be lynched. And so his great-grandfather said, "You'll know, look into the sky and you'll know when I've passed away." And then the story goes that it was a clear day and that one black cloud went through the sky and that was kind of the symbol of his passing. And so for me, the black cloud almost represents something completely different than our traditional idea of what the black cloud represents. All repurposed fabric. There's this beautiful gold thread that comes down the bottom with kind of this idea of hope or light, I guess. So I'm taking you back to the paintings. So back to that idea I was saying earlier about my dreams. I had a dream. I woke up one day just knowing that I had to do 44 small paintings and give them to people I knew. Not quite sure what that was about, but I said, okay, I'll do 44 small paintings. So I did these house paintings for different people in my life and gave them to all these people. And in that process, someone came to my studio and said, I'd love to give you a show of these small houses. So I proceeded to do about 80 more of these small houses. And they were based on a Rumi poem. So Rumi is a pretty well-known Persian poet, and he had a poem called The Guest House. And the poem basically says, think of yourself as a guest house and you have different visitors and allow them to come in. And I can read it to you, actually. It's not that long. It goes like this. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep our house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So all of these different houses that I did had different titles based on this idea of different kind of states of being. I'm going to show you a couple of them. That one was infinity, this idea of infinity, grief, resilience. You can't tell that has lots of glitter on it. Jealousy, serendipity. So that was kind of pushing me in the direction of connecting text and poetry to art. This one, it's probably the one of very few traditional square pieces that I did. This was completely inspired by the Gee's Bin quilters. This idea of, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Gee's Bin quilters, but they're some of the most amazing Black Southern women quilters in the country. And they've been quilting for a long, long time. And for me, it gave me an opportunity to get rid of the measuring tape and use just my hands and eyes to piece the pieces together. Once again, this is old clothes, old sheets, all repurposed fabric. This one's all repurposed fabric, actually. And just to try to make an accurate shape, just eyeballing it, which was really, really fun and kind of became a window for me, creating a window. And this one's titled Ancestors. This one's called Section 8. It's kind of speaking to the housing epidemic that's occurring, probably has been occurring for a long time. and the gentrification in Oakland. This is based on a shack that was near the train tracks. I'm sure is not there anymore. Piecing it together, almost like a traditional quilt, and then coming back in and cutting it apart. So that became a thing for me. I would create a piece, cut it apart, and turn it into something else. This was also a square piece that you could see the top of the roof was cut, put back together. This one's called Hurricane. I love to make that connection between nature, our relationship to nature. And you can see there's these threads that are coming off of it. So when you go up, you really want to just touch it. It's pretty beautiful. People get in trouble for that all the time.